The hell is this?
Yeah.
Welcome, people of the internet,
People of Earth.
people of Earth, and everywhere else.
Yeah. Idaho.
Earth and Idaho, both
Schenectady.
places.
Lynn.
Lynn.
Lynn,
Especially
ooh.
shout out to Lynn, Mass.
Lynn,
Yeah, it is a city
Keep
of
holding it
sin.
down. We pray for you every day, baby.
But yeah, this is the long con. Thank you for watching. If you tried to watch when we tried to do this live and there were technical difficulties,
Yes.
but we're here now, and
We're going to put our frustration aside
yeah,
and focus on a genre that's very frustrated.
yeah, all about putting your frustrations aside.
Yeah.
Garage rock,
Yes.
with two of our friends and two of the foremost experts on garage rock, I would say. We got Chris and Glen from Kids Like You and Me, and blog, label, promotion. What would you describe Kids Like You and Me as?
Local agitators, I guess.
I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So
Boston.
entertainment
agitators.
conglomerate.
Yeah, that's entertainment conglomerate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. I like that.
Do you guys have like a corporate headquarters?
Yep.
We're working on it.
Revere.
Revere.
The whole town of Revere.
Wow.
Yeah, we
We're all
acquired.
working for you.
Yeah.
We were looking around like the Lynn Revere Swampscott area, and then we
Yeah.
kind of settled upon
Yeah.
Revere.
Yeah.
No, that's a good choice.
It's
Very
the
nice.
birthplace of garage rock.
Yeah.
Oh, is it
Paul
really?
Revere and the Raiders? Is that where they
Exactly.
came from?
That's
Well,
exactly-
sort
that
of,
was it.
kind of,
That was it.
yeah. it
Really?
is.
Oh yeah, like the Boss Town sound. You ever listen to any of that stuff?
No, tell me more.
Oh, yeah.
Like what is it? The Spinach Group and all that.
The
What is
Ultimate
it?
Spinach.
Ultimate Spinach.
What are some of the other ones?
The Rockin' Ramrods, are they in that?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Orpheus.
They were Boston Garage.
Was it?
Orpheus.
Orpheus. That's who I was trying to think
There's
of. It was
another
like
one.
a Greek name.
There's
yeah.
like a bunch of Boston like
Van
garage
Morrison?
psych band. Yeah, it's involved with
It's involved that book that they do.
yeah, that's how I know about all them. is
Shout
through
out to
that
the dude who
Astral
wrote the
Weeks
book.
Shout out to dude who wrote the
Yeah,
book
Ryan
from
H.
Halloween on the
Walsh.
Hills.
Yeah.
Yeah, Holly of the Hills.
Sure.
Seems like a cool dude. I've seen him at shows a lot.
Someday
Yeah.
we'll really connect.
Yeah,
This is
Yeah.
an open invitation to come on the long con.
please do.
We'll actually fix
Right.
everything so it works.
Yeah, well,
I'm like with
works.
these guys where we were just like, yeah, whatever.
We can do an
These
episode
amateurs.
on Astral Weeks, right? Van
Yeah.
Morrison. Why
Exactly.
not?
He can do all his COVID stuff.
But yeah, so yeah, the Boston is like a psych garage rock sort of sound based out of Boston in the '60s, and that Astral Weeks book really gets into that a lot. But yeah, so that's like an offshoot of garage rock, and
Oh,
that's
interesting.
the what we're going to be talking about overall today.
Yes.
It's garage rock with these guys who know a lot about it. But first, we have to do what we usually start our episodes with. It's our piece based on what we talked about last time in our road movies episode, and that we ended up talking about on the road or kind of like Star Wars, Han Solo and Chewbacca in the style of On the Road.
Yeah, I was very resistant to this idea.
You were, but eventually
Outraged.
we didn't have better ones, and I beat down your defenses.
Yeah, exactly. You really did.
So yeah, here's In the Space.
The stars stretched out like a million tiny gods smiling back at mankind saying, "Hey there, fella, you go fly in that space, win that race, but go at your own pace." And so me and Chewie smile back as we race through the Kessel Run, my jalopy shaking like a salacious crumb, each twist and turn around each holy asteroid tearing loose on 2 bolts from the old lady. I hear her whine as we careen past the TIE fighter with its dark eyeball window, like staring into the empty void, but the void in all of us. Or maybe it's just the void that lives in people who never get any kicks before. Maybe it's just the hole where the bolt came loose, but I cry back, "Hold on, Heavenly Falcon, go fly your endless race, only to return Selene to reach Tatooine." It's soft, yellow, buttery sands that hug down in the final embrace, the mouth of the Sarlacc empty as the endless void of the TIE fighter windows. Chewie said like the wise Buddha, and I gazed out through the yet another blue hyperspace as we shot forward suddenly. Now that Chewie had told me that he fixed the hyperdrive as we rushed at literally the speed of light, light from suns, the holy protectors, the eyes that do have eyes. Chewie was now reading me his newest poem, Growl. He continued, "I saw the hairiest Wookiees of my generation, destroyed by the Empire, roaring, hysterical, shaved, dragging themselves through Death Star streets at dawn looking for a ship to fix. Shaggy-haired warriors burning for their ancient life debt, flying off in the shiny machinery of night, who imprisoned and conscripted and doggy-eyed and loyal sat up high in the captain's chairs, piloting the supernatural emptiness of Dagobah mud huts, flying through the trees or planets contemplating jizz."
Chewie had really set my brain off thinking about jizz. How Figrin Dan, or Fig as we called him, would blow that clue horn and the mystic rhythm of jizz would set the room ablaze, Daddy, like 10,000 land speeders at full blast, kicking up a windstorm in the Tatooine desert. All was right in the whole of the world, the big speck in the galaxy, the rotating saucer that makes the day and the night, as I lit a spice joint and stared out into holy space. Maybe Luke and all them were right, and there was some greater all-encompassing, all-knowing force out there in the world. That's what that Zen trickster Obi-Wan had told me when we hiked those holy mountains of Alderaan. When I met Obi-Wan on this trip, he gave me the sacred advice of the endless stars. I told him all my fears and suspicions about the Force and all this religious mumbo-jumbo they were always talking about, and how when the dice roll and the dust clears, downtime's heavenly highway, all that's left thumbing a ride to the next planet is luck, and that's all there is to it and the basis for everything. He told me there is no luck, and it really swung my head for a loop, man. It really swung my head for a loop, man. I mean, it really wowed me. What if we're not all just on the cosmic roulette wheel spinning helplessly into the void and always landing on coal black as the night sky? Sweet obsidian space between planets, between people, between ships and stars, that high-flying immediate moment of now space, and all I'm doing is flying my ship between one now and the next. I hitched a ride out to the landing port where the old Falcon was docked. It was glowing like an ancient holy hamburger with an olive on the side. I wanted to eat that burger, and everywhere it took me and everything it got me, and I knew Chewie would eat that burger too. But that burger was not ours now to eat. Only the endless void of outer space knows that burger gets eaten by who and at what time you eat it. As we clambered into the ship and the hatch door closed behind, closing the mechanical eye on this desolate planet inhabited by the filthiest angels in the buzzing hive of desert huts, closing that eye for now on who know, maybe forever, will we ever see that yellow sand, ever hear that heavenly jizz, ever drink with that scum and villainy ever again on luck or the Force or whoever sitting in the crystal pilot's chair of life, in their home on this planet, in this speck of godly dust in the endless Buddha of space? Or will we someday meet our own Death Star and be blown to smithereens like our own private Alderaan, and become just another waving ghost in yet another of life's cathartic triumphs? I don't know, and neither does Chewie, and neither does Greedo. Like he'll never know who shot first in that fateful roll of the cosmic dice. Maybe nobody knows. Maybe we're all just rolling our own cosmic dice on the craps table of heaven, and there is no luck or force or anything deciding how it lands. Just space. That's in the space.
It's very powerful. Way more powerful than I thought it was going to be.
That was really powerful.
Yeah. It's hard.
I mean, it's been our own work, but I'm still like really powerful.
Yeah, you know. Kerouac really thought about Star Wars. Yeah. What would Jack Kerouac have thought about Star Wars? He never lived to see it. R.I.P. Jack Kerouac, who loved Star Wars.
Like, what is an Ewok? He'd be so confused by Ewoks.
I don't even know. There's not really a good way to transition.
Yeah, I was wondering about that the whole
From
time.
Star
I was like,
Wars
the transition.
into
Exactly.
But
Yeah, I wish they had rock bands in Star Wars.
I mean, there's just that
Instead
one.
of that jizz.
Yeah, there's the
Right.
Jizz. Well, there's Max Rebo's band. I guess
Yeah,
that's.
like the Catino.
They're still
Yeah, they could do. Well, that's Jizz. That's the name of that style.
Oh, really?
Thanks
Yeah,
for clarifying that
that's
for
the
our audience.
official.
Ah, all right.
You thought we were just talking about
I
other stuff,
was,
huh?
yeah.
You were like, I'm on this offensive show.
Yeah,
I know. I was,
That's why we had it in
if
there.
I wasn't
so many
getting my
times.
guarantee, I would have walked away.
Yeah. Well, we'll get you that after the show. We promise. We swear. We know a guy. He's good for it. I swear.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I guess what we're mostly here to talk
Right.
about today. We're gathered here today to talk about this thing called garage rock.
Yeah.
And where do you start when you start talking about garage rock? I don't know.
From you, Bully Bully.
Wooly Bully.
And
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
like,
I don't know.
It's a great
for
song.
me, that was like my beginning, kind of just
Okay,
like
yeah.
there's some weird stuff like that's out there and very different.
Yeah, that probably was the first garage rock song that I knew via like the Chipmunks version of it.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
And there was like a New Hampshire State lottery ad that had Wooly Bully in it that I was nuts about.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think I heard it in Happy Gilmore and like some other movies, but I don't know if I
Yeah.
made the connection. I thought I knew the song, but same thing with like Louie Louie. And
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
kinda, but then later found out that's what garage rock was.
Well, was that? Did you know it was garage rock at the
No, not at all.
Well, even
I
at
thought
the
it was a
time, they
weird
didn't
novelty
they didn't
song.
know it was
Yeah.
garage rock either.
Yeah.
It's some of the best songs, like our Surf and Bird and
Sure,
like,
yeah.
our
Yeah.
novelty, like weird one.
That's a good point.
I think
Yeah.
probably for me at least, was hearing just like looking up like history of rock and roll stuff, and like Ramones covered Surfing Bird.
Yeah,
Same thing
yeah.
like that. Maybe like learning about punk rock, and then they often called.
Was
garage
that in your college
before
course, the
punk.
history of
No,
rock
it
and
was,
roll?
it was, but it was actually. They did start the professor did start the punk chapter class with Louie Louie.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah, hell yeah.
And he's like, does anyone know what the hell he's saying?
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, oh, well, anyone can play their own instruments.
Yeah,
and that was
definitely.
kind of, I think, the idea. But yeah, I think at least for us, for our part, we really got into garage rock more in like the late 2000s, and because I thought, and I guess actually I think. One point I'd like to hammer home in this episode, although I'm sure we'll get into a bunch of stuff, is like oftentimes with garage rock, people kind of have this like look at it from like a pop culture perspective, where it's like, oh, it's this thing in the '60s. Kids started bands out of their garages, and then that became into like psychedelic stuff and punk or whatever, and then like, oh, there was a revivalist thing, the White Stripes in 2000s, like, and some other record collector weirdos are into some other little bands here and there, but that's about it. And it's like, it's like a whole genre, eras, different eras,
A lot of
and
history.
a lot of history. It never really stopped, it never really went away, and like has a million like subgenres. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, I forget where.
Oh no, yeah. Yeah, no,
I asked,
mean,
what's your name?
Damn it.
Yeah, no. That's like a good summary of.
That actually reminds me of like a Nardwuar, where he's like the Jay-Z, he's like, who are you? And he has like this whole like really like larger, like I'm this, da. He's like, no, but like, what's your name? And he's like, oh.
No, you should have that. You should have your grandiose.
Yeah.
You know?
Just it all, instead of a name tag, just all that written down, so you can't like actually read it anymore.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, that was like a good kind of run through of what garage rock is and what it means, etc.
Yeah.
No, and a lot of that, that all makes sense, and that's kind of how I feel about it too, I guess, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's the most DIY kind of thing, and I also love how you see like different eras, like, oh, this is the year that the Yardbirds were hitting it, like,
Yeah.
so everyone is ripping off the Yardbirds, and then literally he played me something off of Nuggets where it's just a carbon copy of the Beatles, kind of.
Yeah, it was like it had
vocal
like the
line.
exact melody of "In My Life" by the Beatles. It was very funny, but yeah.
And then they get totally psychedelic and weird and out there, you know. So
Yeah,
Because there
definitely.
was an explosion of garage bands in the early 60s, correct?
yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of
Yeah.
like what, like kids starting bands in their garages and so forth, and like, you know, I mean, it's like a lot of the stuff from the early rock and roll inspiring those bands, but then also British Invasion, and then like my dad was in a band, and actually it was before even Beatles, and they were saying they were just like, he said it was just like, yeah, like kids just, you know, buy guitars for cheap and whatever and stuff for cheap, and then play, you know, in their basements or garages or whatever. And a lot of times it was covers, kind of like we were saying.
Yeah.
That's where I think to this day there's so many covers of stuff, and like, you know, like the Mummies garage band from later,
Yeah.
like half their album was like covers.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just like, but
When you think
know.
of like the Cramps too. and stuff
Yeah,
like
no,
that,
I
totally
didn't find
fun
out
shit.
until later that like so many of those Cramp songs were actually like these like badass original songs
Yeah.
from like 50s and 60s.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, where would you say like garage rock started? Like, where did it originate? You know what I mean? Like, what is the birthing point? You know?
Yeah, I guess
I
in a
mean,
garage.
you did mention Louis Louis. That's pretty.
Louis
Yeah,
Louis, but
yeah.
it's like, but then we're talking about, you know, like 50s. A lot of like early rock and
Yeah.
roll stuff has
Yeah.
is a lot of the same
depends
vibe.
if you're-
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's where it becomes difficult to distinguish between garage and maybe what punk a lot of people would refer to, because of course there could be cases in either way that the spirit and the mentality of it is something that could go back
yeah, oh,
truly
definitely.
centuries or even millennia.
That's true, because if you're talking
Caveman
about
garage rock would be
Well,
cool.
yeah,
that's true,
Yeah.
because if we're talking about
True,
if we're talking about it as like an idea,
Yeah.
as an ideology,
Yeah, as an
then,
idea.
then it transcends like rock music as a
Yeah.
genre, even. And yeah,
yeah.
I know what you mean.
No,
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, and garage was called punk
Yeah.
in the 70s.
Yeah,
They
it's
referred to
weird.
it as punk
Definitely.
before punk rock became. It wasn't like even like, oh, it's proto punk. They just then like punk later.
So there's a link.
And I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of like
They later
early,
called it.
like when punk rock started blowing up in the 70s, a lot of people referring it to as like avant garage and stuff.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
when it didn't quite
Yeah,
have like
yeah.
a set name yet. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But yeah, right. There's the distinguishing
Yeah.
factor between the ideology and the spirit of it, and then the actual sound itself. Because those
Yeah.
are totally different things. So
Yeah.
you could probably point to Louis Louis or other things where you're like, okay, it's
Yeah.
maybe that simple structure, but possibly played with a looseness
Yeah.
that the people in the 50s might not have necessarily been in tune to.
Sure.
As I don't know.
Yeah.
No, that's
I agree
fair.
with that. I think definitely a looseness is a huge part of it. Almost like anti-aesthetic, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, unless you're like,
I mean, some
Kind of
people
a-
were wearing
yeah.
like suits and shit.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
That's true.
it's
At
like-
this
Yeah.
point, it's almost
Yeah.
become an aesthetic.
Yo,
like,
yeah,
the
no,
origin
definitely,
of it.
yeah,
I know
yeah,
what you
yeah.
mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, for sure. But, yeah, and like, I guess as like a genre, like a lot, it is kind of a mixed bag when you look at like at least what we can like collectively through the compilations and whatever, like popular 60s garage stuff, but like some of it, most of it probably is actually like more decently played than is like given off or whatever. Is like, you know what I mean, they're probably more like, you know, you listen to like the Strange Loves or whatever, and it's like, it's actually like pretty decent sounding. It's not as like, you know, trashy
Yeah.
as it kind of makes it sound or whatever, or just the standards have gone down over time, which is both I think are true. But then there's some like, and you get into some of the other comps, and like they really do sound like not necessarily like as like sloppy per se, but rather like, I guess like trashier and the more like just like it's really raw. It's like not put together, and you can kind of see why. It's like some of these songs were, maybe didn't make it past like their hometown or whatever.
That's what I'm saying. Like the Back from the Grave series.
Yeah.
There's so many bands there where it's just like, this is like a weird song about my motorcycle. It's just like, and it's like a regional hit, like of their friends, so they're jazzed about it. They got like a record they can play, so.
You think the infrastructure at that time was easier to put out records without necessarily having a lot of money?
It might have been
to today,
yeah.
Like it is.
Everyone was doing those singing in a booth records.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
Putting out like an actual physical record, probably.
Yeah.
Well, the turnaround time was quicker back then. Way more. Right?
Like now you can just put something on the internet.
Yeah, definitely.
But like, as far as putting out a physical object, it might have been easier. That's
I'd say so, and it was maybe. You could probably even get into some class elements and things like that as to looking up who was able to possibly afford that. I mean, that's certainly something to consider.
It's probably a lot of middle class or upper class, even teenagers. But at the same time, like you're saying, a lot of the equipment being like cheap or whatever.
Well, definitely so much of what Jack White is obsessed with back in those days was getting like the Sears Silvertone. Really like ones that were in the Sears Roebuck catalog and stuff like that back in the day. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Like what makes something garage rock? Then you know what I mean? Like what is something where you're like it needs these? Well, what are the elements that are crucial to it? Like. Because that kind of like raw feeling to it is crucial, but I feel like there are a lot of bands that are distinctly garage rock bands that are a little more polished.
Oh, definitely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like
they're cops to me.
Yeah.
Well, like Chris has always we've discussed this, and I think you would say probably one of the distinguishing elements is the pop.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, to loosely put it, there is some level of catchiness inherent in these songs that... But even then, that's kind of tough to say, because then you could be like, oh, the 50s rock and roll, the 50s pop was a similar kind of thing. So what really distinguishes that from the garage?
Yeah. It's hard to say. There's a few different things.
50s is a little bit more rigid, like structurally, I would say.
You know what I mean? Agree. Yeah. Whereas you think the 60s may have... Well, it's interesting. I know, it's wild to think that there's such a breadth of work that's kind of within the garage rock umbrella, yet you kind of know it when you hear it almost.
Yeah,
for sure.
But that was a good point about the pop, though, because I think that is one of the dividing lines between garage and punk, like we were saying earlier. It's like there's a line for sure, but it's definitely a fine line. And I think that's one of the things where it's like punk rock doesn't have to have that catchiness, whereas garage rock almost uniformly does.
Yeah. Although even then, actually, some of the later bands, like maybe more. I'm trying to think, kind of examples, but maybe not from like the 60s, but some of the later bands. I don't know how far if we want to. But
could that be all the stuff? You know so much about the '80s bands that I have no idea about any of those bands.
Oh yeah, I was just talking about like the Children Nuggets, like C86 style sort of stuff.
Oh yeah, that's even another.
Yeah, exactly.
See, there's that, and then like the book. Chris, hold it up.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Plug this thing. Yeah. He wrote this.
I didn't write this. But
if you're listening,
if you're listening, we all wrote this.
It was a work of love.
I mean, this
I wonder if this might be a reaction. Well, Chris can describe it, but a reaction to the C86 stuff?
Okay, yeah. I can see that.
I don't know, maybe. It seems it's more like... So this book is called We Never Learned the Gunk Punk Undergut, 1988 to 2001, although there's a lot of stuff before 1988. But it was written by Eric Davidson of the New Bomb Turks, who are a band that, honestly, it's kind of... funny is that if you hear them, you're probably not gonna be like, oh, this is a garage band or garage punk band. However, they have a lot of the elements that we would describe, and they fit the era and everything. But basically, his like point of writing this book was like 2001, as it said, 1980, 2001 comes around, and it's like a garage rock revival, and all the stuff we've kind of talked about, but we just said too, it's a little bit cleaner. So there's like the Strokes, Hives, White Stripes, and he even talks about some of those bands in there. And he's just like, whoa, wait a second. Like, all these bands are getting super popular, and it's like there was a whole decade and more of him and his friends doing all these things that weren't really talked about and pretty much were like a footnote at best. And so he kind of like, well, he actually purposely didn't want to put garage in the title, just because he didn't want people to immediately think of like 60s. So like
that makes sense.
But yeah, it's like he there's a lineage, and one of the main things, along with like the Ramones and the Cramps and bands in the 70s, like punk bands and whatever other stuff like Psychobilly that took the garage stuff from the 60s, morphed it into maybe more aggressive stuff. One of the other things was the compilations like Nuggets. Pebbles is one in the 70s. Yeah. Nuggets is like an earlier example, because it's really funny that it was like a retrospective, but it came out in like 72, so we're we're only talking like really like
it's like those are the days.
Yeah, right, like way
our
back
best days
then.
are behind us.
Right.
Or at least the first volume was 72, but then again, and Back from the Graves from like 83, 84. But if I had to say though, there's tons of compilations, but that's probably my favorite series is the Back from the Grave stuff. And
they're fun. They have the best artwork.
Yeah, definitely.
All these greaser skeletons beating the crap out of punk rock kids, or like burning records, burning like it's just
exactly.
A record and it says like Sex Pistols.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or it says like disco. There's actually a reissue. I have one of them and it says Arcade Fire. And
stick it to the man.
Yeah, it's like
Sinead O'Connor, fight the real enemy.
Yeah. But that's like, I'd say, one of the more direct connections to the like stuff that came later, like stuff in that book and even today. But going back to like the sort of what are like the tenets or elements thing, I would say for sure the pop stuff, but also simple chords and stuff like that, simple beats. I think it's not necessary, but it's usually going to be fun. And so someone could say, well, wait, this song over here has these really serious lyrics, but for me, at least as a listener, I always felt like with garage music, the tone was always going to be fun, even if the subject matter was messed up and dark.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's a song by this band called The One Way Street. It's called Jack the Ripper, and it's like, it's, we were at karaoke the other night listening to Stan, So literally someone killing somebody, and like the emotion in that song is like at the forefront. When you listen to Jack the Ripper, serial killer, I don't know, for me anyway, I'm not like feeling the emotion of Jack the Ripper killing people. I'm like having fun listening to this song, and
you're bopping.
Exactly.
Oh, interesting.
Bopping to a murderer.
Fun. I think.
Could it be the vocals too? Do you find that they can be a little bit more off kilter, so to speak?
Yeah.
Well,
I was gonna say that was my other thing. Is I think it generally has to be kind of weird, and weird is kind of a contextual thing, but I feel like it has to be.
It's hard to define, but a lot of it
it's
does.
hard, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
very weird.
It has to be kind of weird, you know what I mean? I think that's one, because so many like musically, so much like you could say like, well, musically, structurally, this is kind of like, why is this not a pop punk song or emo?
Yeah.
And I don't know. For me at least, a lot of that stuff was like way too pretty.
Yeah. Well, it does have that same. I was about to say like one of the tenants, just frustrated about women. That's like 80 to 85%.
That's true. It is a lot more like love songs, at least in early garage rock.
Yeah.
Totally.
And then it just gets to like crazy druggy song.
Yeah.
That is true. Yeah, that is true. Kind of the.
I don't need her anymore.
And then just songs about random things such as like Los Psychos.
Yeah, a band from
example,
Peru that wrote a song called Demolition, which is, I mean, they have a bunch of great songs, but that's like their most famous one, and it's so raw anyone out there, listen to Demolition by Los Psychos. It's like basically the lyrics about destroying the train station, but it has this awesome like surf, and like British invasion.
So it's like the
stuff.
frustration meets party.
Yeah, exactly, and that's exactly it.
That could be like a good summary of garage. Frustration meets party.
Yeah. But also illustrates that it went beyond, like, usually people talk about American bands, but it was, went beyond America too, and Canada.
It is kind of like the original punk rock in that way of it was the first thing where people were like, oh, I can do this.
Yeah,
like, it has that ethos of
for sure, yeah.
It was like, oh, it's accessible. That's like another key tenet, I would say, probably, right? Is
yes,
like,
totally.
That like it has to have an element of like, oh, if you just like pick up a guitar and like fuck around with it for like a couple of weeks, you can probably do this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I agree.
It's a very democratic form of music.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's surprising that it's not. It comes in waves.
Well, Chris and I
talk about this
other topic, but yeah,
I know. I don't.
We can get into it.
We can get into
I don't know where
just,
you guys had or if we were just going
freeform.
Oh yeah, let's just go.
All right. From the side,
you did a reading of In the Space.
That's true. That's true. All right, that's true.
And that's sort of
that's the vibe we're in.
That's true.
That's the vibe.
In the spirit of the where are you gonna go on? Of like saying the, where you saying like there was like, I think I knew where you were going with like why is it not more popular or something? Is that with it?
Right.
Yeah.
The fact that, because Chris and I, what we often do is at least on sort of a local level, and this is sort of fitting with Festival coming up.
Yeah.
Because
that's true. Yeah.
We often kind of think of things as as Chris and I, kids like you and me. We are basically formed from garage.
Oh, 100%.
The modern rock, the modern garage of the late 2000s. That was that kind of garage punk. That was so us. Like we were basically defined by it, and then we gradually were kind of opened, at least in the live circuit around Boston, things that expanded beyond that. But there's still, during that time, there were garage bands, so to speak, and it has sort of, it's come and gone, and that might be the case across the entire world, for all we know, that it's going to kind of come and go as a genre, which is that's on a very micro level. Do you see what I mean? That's that's kind of getting really into the more specifics of the live landscape, the actual scenes that are happening throughout the world. So that's a whole, that opens a whole can of worms. But you know what I mean by that idea that for such an accessible form, it's kind of funny that it kind of goes in and out.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Maybe people get less frustrated and then get frustrated.
Yeah.
Everyone's happy for a little bit. Everyone has a girlfriend.
Well, actually, I think it's more the opposite almost, that because even though there's the frustration, it is so much like, it's such fun music, but like, I think kind of what I was saying earlier, where I think there's like almost a detachment from emotion, if that makes sense, where like, I mean, to think of just like a genre that was so popular that I never really got into was like something like emo by, I've always hated that like genre, that term, but like the emotions are like at the forefront of the music.
So like this doesn't take itself as seriously?
No, yeah, exactly. Definitely.
Like garage
definitely doesn't take itself as seriously, but also too,
emo is very serious.
Right, emo is very serious, and they have also there's beyond the 60s stuff, like what is the garage look? There is no the famous thing is like they
layered like a turtleneck and a cool suit.
Well, they joke in this book and the gunk punk stuff where it is like about like they're like, you see guys in like bowling shirts and because those bowling shirts were popular in the 90s, but it's like there isn't really like a look to it. So I would imagine if there was someone was like trying to market like in a commercial way, it's like, what's the all right, how do we package this up? And it's like, what is the, it's not like goth, it's not whatever,
Oh, it sort of reflects it could reflect fashion trends that transcend music.
Like there's the 60s stuff, and I think there's individual bands that have certain looks, but like for the most part, I don't think there's like I don't know. It's a very niche genre. I think that it's weird. It's like it doesn't seem to like translate to wider audiences. But some people also, on the other hand, are like even asking that question of like, why is it not more popular, is like degrading to the music and everything. So, which I never thought, because I always looked at it from the point of view, it's like, well, I'm gonna like this if it's only me liking it, or if everyone likes it. I don't really care either way. But it does. I'm like, it is kind of from like I don't know. It's like from an analytical point of view. I'm like, I'm curious why everyone's like, no, considering this is so based in like pop and rock and roll, you know?
Yeah, it's just like too unpolished or something. I don't know, or like people just don't feel it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what it could be. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your theories, Con Man?
Well, I was thinking like one thing that I feel like usually end up talking about is like bad versions of things, like shitty versions of things. Like, you know, a lot of times you can kind of figure out what like the style or whatever is by like thinking of like things where it's been like done poorly and like why that is.
That's a good point.
And the garage rock is interesting though, because it's like by its very nature, it's kind of hard to do bad.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's a good point.
100%.
It's also so subjective. Like, there's so many bands that people will see and like, oh, I hate that band, and yet like there's other people who love them, and I'm sure that's absolutely true of other genres, but I don't know. It's kind of like, I don't know. Maybe I feel like it's even within. I don't know. It's like even with, I guess because of the music is so like often like simple or amateurish or whatever. There's, you know, we have friends who are in their 50s and 60s that saw a lot of bands that we go see now that are doing like their like not even reunion tours. I don't know how to describe them, but bands like the Oblivions and the Mummies or Gories, and they're like, oh, they're so much better now. Like they like, I love the crappiness or whatever shoddy stuff on the records, but live it was like kind of like it wasn't as good live, and like that's totally subjective. Then you hear other people that are like, oh, it sounds too good now. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know if there's like a clear cut kind
that
of.
is a good point.
I don't know if there's much of a clear.
Yeah.
And then you go to some of these like shows or festivals, and then it's like some people are like, oh, this band sucks. Some people love this band, and it's just like vice versa. And just, I know for me at least, I'm not a big fan of like you were kind of saying, the more polished stuff, or what they would say like definitely I think it sprung up in the 80s, but they still, some of these bands exist now, and even in like, you know, even in Boston where it's like they quoted like people you would say like the Skinny Tie bands or something, and like or it's like sometimes do the 60s look kind of too much, whereas I was always more into like kind of bands that just, it's like it's supposed to be wild, crude music, and oftentimes it's like I preferred stuff that was a little bit closer to that than like an imitation, perhaps.
Yeah.
But imitators can be good too. It's all imitation.
I mean, polished crude is the worst. I want just regular.
Yeah, just regular crude.
I guess that is like a way to do it poorly, is to like attempt garage rock, but like you know, like I'm trying to think. There probably are examples of this, but I'm not thinking off the top of my head. Where it's like some like big like studio or something, which is like we're gonna make a garage rock band.
Well, I'll say
what I mean?
I don't know enough about the band, but the band Jet, where like I know that I hate that song.
Oh yeah,
I forget what it's called, but I can't.
You agree with that Pitchfork review?
I never. Yeah, exactly. I'm sure
the Pitchfork review is just the gif of a monkey peeing in its own mouth.
Okay.
That's one of their more famous reviews.
Wow, yeah. But, yeah, that song, and even, like, I really like the Strokes, but it's funny, I think I said this to you guys the other day or something, I, like, never thought of them as a garage band.
I was when he read them on the list, I was like, what the hell?
I wasn't really knowledgeable, I guess, at the time of that stuff. Like, I knew what garage was, and I kind of thought it stopped after, like, the 60s, and then, like, And then I later found out, it's like, oh, people were still making that music, but I've listened to the Strokes, and when I heard them put in that same like sentence, I was just like, oh, really? That's what they were doing? Kind of like, so, and it makes sense, but I never thought of that.
That's true. I
never thought of it that way. Same thing with Arctic Monkeys. I kind of like never thought of that either.
Yeah. Like I had a similar experience in like that sort of era of like when I first discovered like what garage rock was, kind of in like early mid 2000s. Like I remember like looking up on the internet like modern garage rock, like what are some bands, because I just like I didn't know, I didn't have any access to that. And like finding, like the Strokes I knew because they were already like big.
Yeah.
But like stuff like the Black Keys, I found out through that. Like Hot Snakes, a couple other like stuff I found out through that kind of led me into a lot of other things that I found out more about. But
no, definitely.
But yeah, Jet doesn't really fit that mold.
No, it's like I get where it's like someone coming up with like the basic. Like I said, I don't know enough about the band really to say as a whole, but at least that song, it's like someone coming up with like the basic ingredients, but then just like manufacturing it.
And that felt like a very focus group song.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it is interesting though how a lot of from that specific era, like the early 2000s in particular, there was that element, that which we do not know. There was something in the sauce about that it's hard to really say.
Well, the White Stripes were a big one too, and they did. They're often they're in that book. Same with the Hives and like those bands.
Yeah, the Hives are huge.
Yeah.
And they would probably regard themselves as a garage rock band.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and they're still.
You still could.
Yeah.
But you could almost say, like, oh, is that more like the Back from the Grave, or is that more like the Strokes?
Well, it could be different. I mean, different eras of the band.
Do you know what I mean?
Same thing with White Stripes, definitely.
Is it more of a modern?
in times, but at the same time, it does have a polish to it. Like some of the records are very polished.
That was like what I was thinking, because I was like, oh, like what would be something where it's like a label or a studio or something like co-opting the garage rock sort of vibe, and I was just thinking, oh, like probably the closest thing to an example of that would be like the Monkees, but they're actually like good. You know what I mean? It's like it is interesting. Like that is like a consciously like a TV network trying to be like, we're gonna make a. Well, they were trying to make the Beatles, but like essentially we're gonna make a garage rock band. You know, like I guess that is the closest thing to that, but somehow it ended up good regardless.
Yeah,
right.
You know. And
right,
because we were trying to think like what would be the good, what would be the bad garage rock, and it would, like either something too much gloss or too much like co-opting of a style that is not.
Yeah.
Then you get into like weird arguments about authenticity and stuff, which I guess are like,
let's get into them right now.
Well, I feel like it's another genre that like people have. It's definitely another genre where people have.
I challenge you to the octagon.
No.
It's so true. No, because the authenticity thing.
Fosters. Well, this is a good because I think not as much now, but I feel like. Not even really a ton back then. It was more like I feel like when we first started getting into this stuff.
Oh yeah.
You still see it a little bit, but I honestly
it exists in some form.
I would say to anyone out there, if you're starting to get into like music scene, if you feel like the imposter syndrome, tell people to go fuck themselves for one thing, but two, like if you stay in it for a really long time like us, and you become a lifer, you know what I mean.
You can kind of come full circle because that you had me thinking about like the terminal boredom.
Well, that's what I was. That's what I was gonna say.
You know about terminal boredom?
So, that's what I was gonna get into. But I was gonna say, if you stick around long enough, like it doesn't really matter. First off, like you'll find other people that you like that you can. But also, like even the people who are kind of like bullies, after a while, they can't really like. I don't know. I mean, I don't know, but tell
the world about
I always thought that was the whole like if anyone was like be like, oh, you're a poser, you're not into this, but like you probably don't know me very well because like I like do not if I don't care if I wasn't like genuinely into something, I would not put any of this much amount of like effort or time or like thought into all this other stuff. But anyway, but like after a while, I think people like if you start doing a bunch of stuff, I don't think you kind of can't really claim someone's like, I don't know, at least for me, I like at least feel like, you know what I mean, if you're like going up to shows and playing shows and doing stuff and listening to stuff and like after a while it's kind of just like that's what you're doing and like, you know what I mean, and you just kind of screw the haters, I guess, but
hell yeah.
And they're usually just really bored and miserable and
there might have been there may have been a specific culture.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Boredom, yeah. So you know more terminal boredom than me, but
do you know terminal boredom, Con?
I don't know if I do. I don't think so.
All right, and you don't.
Yeah.
So just briefly, the terminal boredom. I actually don't really know too much of the history, but it was a forum.
Yeah.
Sort of a nerd central message board.
It's very nerdy.
For people that were
Already.
collectors, bands,
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
fans, kind of a meeting of the minds of everyone that was sort of into, loosely, you could probably say, garage punk.
All right. All right.
Garage rock, of course, but then the more recent iterations of it.
Yeah, definitely.
And this is where kind of also the authenticity plays into it too, because we were just, when we got into it, we were full on fan dudes.
Totally. Yeah.
We went fully into the bands that we loved.
Yeah.
Which, interestingly enough, at that time were bands that had a little bit more status and notoriety.
Actually, you just hold on. Now keep going. I was gonna say this is actually a good point about genre too, and even scene stuff that I think separates this genre from not all genres, but from others. But
I wonder if there is this much.
That's what I'm saying. I was gonna step in, but hold on.
Totally
I wanted you to
goes
keep
back
going.
to the
I wanted you to keep going with that because I think what you're kind of getting at is there's certain bands like say like our favorite band was Black Lips, and they and say others like King Kong Barbecue Show or like Hunks and His Punks and like
and Jay
and Jay Retard, and then
he was especially controversial because we can
I mean,
understand
not just the
better.
name alone, but
we can understand the controversy better now in 2023 than we could have in 2010.
Sure.
So 13 years ago, or right after Jay had passed, he was on Matador Records, which people are familiar with. That was sort of
some of these bands
independent, like a pretty big indie label at the time.
Yeah, they kind of got big enough where they never got to the thing is they never got like culturally relevant to the like White Stripes level, but they got big enough that there was a whole slew of people.
Pitchfork Media.
Yeah,
sure, of
course.
They
were all this stuff. Yeah, so
they were covering them like they were Arcade Fire. They were in the same degree of
that like
coverage.
I feel like there was a few years there, maybe more, where it was like you say like the Hype Machine or the Blogosphere or something.
It was powerful,
and it really was a thing that Anyway, is that a lot of bands kind of prior and since. We're like, well, hey, we're all kind of doing the same thing, underground stuff, and we're peers with a lot of these bands. And so people saw, and like friends, peers, interactions.
People that were there.
Some of these guys are still on these boards, mind you. Like Jay was on those boards, some of the Black Lips guys, and like, so
it really broke down the barrier because the artists themselves were posting. So you had like the artists themselves who were at that point getting the hype, they were getting the acclaim.
Yeah.
They were signed to bigger labels, and then you had the dudes that were like the equivalent of what I would say like Johnny and the Food Masters or like bands like this that were sort of.
You had the guy who was just like, and I had one review in Maximum Rock and Roll, and that's all I have to show for my whatever. But they were all like you had every level. It was overwhelmingly the more like underground bands, and that was kind of like, and that still is that culture to this day.
It was the point of contention.
It was that we were so like, for these bands who were way bigger, and so there were people that are like, with that, you guys are just like and then next week you'll be into whatever else, and then
just hopping on their dong.
or like
they thought that we were
yeah.
part of the hype train.
Yeah, literally like some of the even I'm not gonna name names. Literally some of these even like bigger names even were literally like, like screw you, but this and that, and like you'll be into this, whatever, sort of like. Kind of calling us out or something or whatever. It was kind of bizarre, and I think like more in retrospect we understand it a lot more. Didn't make it right, but it was like still it was kind of thing we understand it more. That like I don't think they understood that we were where we were coming from. We were just like, whoa, we're really big into these bands.
Yeah, we just loved the music, and we just couldn't. When we had the Kids Like You and Me, it basically had started out as a
fan
blog.
site,
fan site, blog, and we were just giving love on a daily basis to all the bands that we loved. We would see they came out with a new song, we'd post it, so we were like an alternative media source. But essentially, our tastes kind of aligned with the larger, say like Pitchfork stuff. So it was like what we were posting wasn't all that revolutionary from that, but we were just so into it that you could see why somebody who was in like a small local band that might have played with these larger bands, why they would be like,
there were people that are like, why are you covering
why are you
for
doing
the millionth
this?
time? Why aren't you talking about this and that or whatever? But even some of the I remember, again, I won't name any names, but we did have someone from even like a bigger band that was like emailed us and was like, hey. Because we met them after the show and they're like, where's my review?
Whoa.
Yeah, like whatever, and then went off into like all this tangents about how like, you probably like my music and everything and all this stuff, whatever, and like all this.
Well, you do.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like we were. We don't. It's like we're not some like professional organization. We were just a blog, right? It's like, sorry, I have finals or something or whatever, what I mean? Like, whatever, it was weird, but,
It was weird.
But I will say, though, and so I think what that, I think as a genre, which makes the more modern day, and perhaps even the 60s stuff, because a lot of that stuff, for the most part, was in, like, VFW halls and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And other small, like, at Hops and stuff, I think, I don't know enough about other genres of obviously it's definitely not exclusive to garage, but I think because it's such a small genre overall, it it does that I think connection to the music and relationship with the music I think is really different. You know what I mean? Of it's weirdly it's made me both, because I've met so many great people. It's made me so encouraging in a lot of ways, but it's made me very cynical in other ways. That so many people will talk about. It's like, oh, this singer in this band, I wonder what they're like and this and that. And it's like when you start to meet people, it makes them way more human. And that whether they're an awesome person or a piece of crap, it doesn't matter. Just to me, that completely has changed.
That's the inverse of
literally, I have some of my favorite singers ever. I could be like, oh, this person also threatened to beat me up one time. No kidding, or this person shoved me over here at Goner Fest. You know what I mean? Literally, it really, it's so bizarre, but it's it's
out of my way.
You know what I mean? Or this person's crazy or whatever. This and that. You know what I mean?
That's most musicians. Yeah, there's a lot of them.
That's the thing, but it's maybe so when even someone asks who would you have who's the top 3 people you'd have a dinner with that's a celebrity, and I'm I don't know, because honestly it's I don't know if I want to find out what they're like sometimes.
Oh yeah.
But that being said, most people are pretty cool, so that I've met.
Yeah.
I'd pick The Rock times 3. 3 different rocks.
3 the rocks.
Yeah.
Young Rock.
Oh yeah.
Fucking in his prime Rock. And then Elder Statesman.
Now Rock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our future president, The Rock.
Just have them talk to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of garage rock.
Whoa!
Good transition. I like it. Yeah.
Do you guys like it?
Yeah. Not really, not anymore. No. Yeah. Kind of over it.
But yeah, I don't know. I guess.
All right. Oh, this would be a fun one.
Well, that's a good one.
What's your the most random? I have mine. What's the most randomly named band that you like? Like where you're just like, where the hell did they come? Like I love going through garage rock comps. Be like, where the hell did they come up with it?
Oh, that's amazing. And I like. Do you know how on like the comps too? That they'll sometimes include the liner notes.
Yeah,
they'll give like a brief
those.
description of the band. That's always.
It's great. Yeah.
That's such a good question. Damn.
I think mine is called the Jelly Bean Bandits.
Ah, okay.
They're
look
super
them up.
dope. They're like I think ran like New York State or something. But yeah, and their album. They're all wearing sombreros for some reason.
Wow.
It's very random.
Maybe they were influenced by Los Psychos.
You never know.
Could be.
That's the other one I was trying to think of. The Mexican group, was it the Dugs or the Jug?
I don't know them. That's another thing with like not just garage stuff, but in general, which I love is like the more like you get it, you like kind of go down the rabbit hole. It's like there's no end to like. I challenge anyone that's like there's nothing to listen to or there's nothing to watch, and then it's like. I don't know. Maybe you're like not trying hard enough, especially in this day and age where you can look up stuff. Because usually that's followed by I've already watched everything on Netflix, and I'm like, well, okay, so if that's like your bar, then
This person seems fun.
no, I just was like a general. I didn't go. I meant like I was like a generic person, not an actual.
That is an
Well, I
interesting.
would kick their ass.
yeah.
They've seen it all on Netflix.
But
Like the
with
whole
music,
thing,
there's so many.
all Planet Earth.
There's so many. Good
Every
things.
gardening show.
Yeah, but even then, I know it's like there's probably something.
Which even that speaks to something about garage rock in that like it tends to be people who are into a lot of other things who are into it. Like, we talk about it as this very simple, like everybody can do it sort of thing.
Yeah.
But for the most part, like you were talking about, it kind of comes in and out of being popular and isn't always a thing that's like in the pop culture mainstream.
Yeah.
But what was the point I was just making? I lost my train of thought halfway through that sentence.
But maybe
I'm trying to think.
I was talking about garage rock bands.
Oh,
It might not
I
be-
know for me, it's like at least you're saying. I don't know if this is where you're going. Like, kind of opens you to different genres, or there's a lot of associations or subgenres stuff. Because
Oh yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah, like it's kind of like
that's
people,
definitely. No, I'm going.
Oh no, yeah, there tends to be people who are into a lot of more different things. Like you're talking about, like the Netflix thing. Is like people who are just gonna watch
He's gonna
that
get on the screen.
aren't gonna. Am
Oh,
I
yeah,
not on
yeah.
the screen?
Yeah, tuck in a little bit.
But people who are just gonna watch the Netflix thing are gonna potentially have like slightly more narrow taste. Not that that's like a judgment or anything, but like than someone who's gonna know about movies that are a little bit more DIY or something.
Yeah.
And in the same way that like garage rock, anybody can do it, but for the most part, it's not just random normal people. I mean, there's a lot of that too. There's a lot of that too.
Yeah.
But
No.
it does tend to be people
That's
who are
fair.
like branch out to it after they get into a lot of, or in the process of getting into a lot of other stuff, because it becomes like, oh, I can do this, but I can approximate it while I figure it out.
Yeah.
You know what I
That's a
mean?
good point. Yeah.
100%. That's
All right, we have 2 minutes left.
2 minutes
Do you wanna
left?
Make some like quality points about garage rock.
Sure.
Some of garage
What's the
rock
best
in
garage
3
rock band?
words.
Everybody go.
Sonic.
Or song, I guess. Or
I can go with song. I would say "Perversion" by later garage like revival-ish band called the Trash Women. So if the Trash Men Surfing Bird, it's a song from 1993 called the "Perversion" by a band called the Trash Women. It's one of my favorites.
What did you say, Glenn? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Although
Yeah,
Demolition is pretty close.
you
one,
really
too.
did put me on the spot.
We can
there.
go around.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. I'll order. You just look at the menu. Definitely Psycho by the Sonics. I think that's
You
like,
son of a bitch.
and
That's
I got
gonna
to
be my
do it.
answer.
I did it live. I performed it with my friends in college, and my friend had an amazing Misfits cover band, and he selected us. He was like, "You guys have to form a band and do a bunch of punk cover songs before us," and that was our like best one. So,
That's awesome.
and I stole your song.
You stole mine. That was going to be my answer. Is Psycho by the Sonics. I just like. I don't know. To me, that's just like the ultimate. Just like it's one of the most fun, like hard hitting. Just like just packs like such a punch in like 2 minutes, and just like I don't know. Just everything about it is just like the perfect rock song to me. I don't know.
So raw. It's that rawness that just makes it incredible. Yeah.
I'd probably say the Barbaras.
Great band. That doesn't. Nice. It's a little bit different than Garage, but fits with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, they're
more sunshine pop.
Yeah, they're more sunshine pop,
but with like a weird.
That has,
way weirder, but yeah.
They have the elements and
for sure messy sunshine pop. But yeah.
Messy sunshine pop, which a little different than Garage, but the spirit might be more there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. What song would you say?
I would probably say I really like the song Topsy Turvy Magic.
It's cool.
By the Barbaras, if anyone wants to listen to that.
I'll have to check it out. And what should people know about Kids Like You and Me?
Well, I would say Kids Like You and Me has a
show on Sunday. If this does get up in time.
It'll get up before Sunday.
Watching.
Santa Slay is going to be working overtime.
I'd say Sunday, September 17th, 12:30. Get your ass to Lincoln Park in Somerville, Long Kong and Barn, with the MCs. Honey Cassette's playing, KO Queen, Ick, Spatulas, Headband, and some other mysterious guy on a guitar.
Up.
Sure.
Arrow band?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, people weren't sure if it's a band or if it's a thing, but it's a thing. It's a band.
No, I'm excited. I've never seen it. I'm excited to see it.
Sweet.
But
thanks for having us.
Thanks, Chris and Glen. We've been wanting to have these guys on the show. Yeah, for a while.
And we finally broke in.
They finally broke in, so we had to let them do it.
Thank you.
And
thanks for that window.
We'll release the
fix that window after you.
The hostage can be released.
Yeah. No, but it was great hanging out with you guys and talking about garage rock, and excited to see some garage rock on Sunday.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. Right. The continuation of garage rock.
Yes. Well, good night, America.
Good night, America. The universe. Those aliens they found in Mexico.
Yeah. That looked real.